Hello, everyone. Welcome back to season 2, episode 11 of His and Her Life Hacks podcast. My name's Dawne.
And I'm Larry.
And on today's episode, we're going to talk about if you've ever wanted to do your very own podcast, this episode is for you. On today's episode, we're going to share some of the takeaways, experiences, good and bad. Most importantly, the feedback that we've received, which was incredible. So thank you so much and keep it coming. It was very touching and inspiring, and I'm glad that we've spoken on the topics that we have so far for that reason. One of the things, speaking of that, was we wondered, is what we have to say even of value, or would anybody even be interested? And the answer is yes. You guys have told us, yes, this is interesting. Keep it coming. You guys have sent us like some topics, and this season we're going to bring on some guests. So we're going to do a lot of different things. But anyway, so if you have been on the fence and wanted to do a podcast and you kind of feel like, I don't know where to start or whatever, that's what we're going to dive into today. And we've got you here. So you want to start?
Yeah, so I'll start with the technology piece, because I know when we started talking about this, that was scary to me. I was like, it was very intimidating. Like, how do we actually make this thing work? And in reality, we'll caveat this by we are definitely novices, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who are way more sophisticated than us in the equipment that they use, the process that they go through, how much editing that they do.
And we want to it's kind of like dumbing it down for you in the sense that we wanted to do this podcast, but we had to make it work within the means that we had, and we didn't want to spend a fortune doing it at first. I mean, we can build to that. We actually have some new Grit to Grace and His and Her Life Hacks collateral that we're going to be hanging up and putting up, but that's just like new to come studio changes. Here's some mugs that we got from our children.
Courtesy is active.
Yes. And so anyway, so like what we're going to share with you as far as technology is super, dumbed down, but by all means, go for it. Do whatever you want to do.
All right. So first of all, shout out to my friend, fraternity brother, Skip Lindenberg. He's probably done, 500 podcasts in his lifetime. And so I called him up. I'm like, Skip, where do we even get started? And he kind of gave me the lay of the land. And the reality is it's not that difficult, right? So we went out, we bought a microphone that you see sitting in front of you. Most people would actually put headphones on, but because we're in a room that has really good noise reduction, we don't feel like we need that. We did invest in a pretty high-end Mac, right? We wanted the camera and so forth and the video from it and the processing speed. So we did do that.
And the microphone, we should say, it's a Blue Yeti, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good, and it actually came in a kit, and it did come with headphones and some noise blockers and stuff. So it was a nice kit, and it was decently priced, but the Blue Yeti came very high recommended. So we chose that. There were a couple options, but...
Yeah, and then so that's the hardware side. It's pretty straightforward. We have a ring lamp in here for the lighting, to make sure it's good if it starts to get dark. But there wasn't a lot that went into it beyond that. Again, I'm sure a lot more people have much more sophisticated studios than that. But then it's the software, and so we knew coming in that we wanted to do both video and audio.
So that's a decision you have to make.
Unfortunately, there's some programs, there's some packages out there. One's called Riverside, and that's who we use. And basically, that's what we're using right now. So you turn it on, it starts to film you, right? And so it's as you're going through your podcast, it's filming it and streaming it up to their servers. And then once you get done, you basically take that final product. You can edit it, and there's a real easy way to edit. They actually put all the language, they script it out for you, so you can actually go in and just delete words, and that actually deletes the video along with it. So really simple to do editing. Again, there's much more sophisticated ways to do it. Some people export it. They go through a lot of detail editing and then import it back in. We don't. We just use whatever's available in Riverside.
And as far as editing, like we literally, hate to tell you guys, but we film this and we go. We really don't do a lot of editing at all, if any.
Yeah, very little.
Yeah.
So, and then we take the video portion of it and we upload it through the program, through Riverside, into YouTube. And that's the video part of it. So we have our YouTube channel that was easy to create, and that's where you go to watch the video portion. And then we take the audio portion and we upload it to another package platform called Buzzsprout.
Mm-hmm.
And then Buzzsprout takes that file and distributes it to Apple, to Spotify, to Google. So all those places that you listen to your audio podcast. And these are both Riverside and Buzzsprout are pretty reasonably priced, right? We're talking like $20 a month type of fee. So it's not like it's a huge, really expensive way to do it, but turns out it's fairly straightforward. Again, fairly easy to do. We're not totally super sophisticated on this, but again, we just want to kind of give you some insight into if you really want to start your own podcast, it's not like unachievable. It's really within your means to do it.
Yeah. And then so that's the technology side of it. And then the next part is probably harder, but so far we haven't had any trouble, but it's preparing for each episode. And what does that entail? So a lot of times, like in the beginning, we made a list of like 30 topics and we're like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. And it ended up that we ended up like bundling some of those into one. And we're like, all right, well, we've just used up like 4 episodes in one. So then, randomly though, also like seasonally, there were certain things that came about and we were like, oh, well, let's talk about back to school, or something happened and we're like, we need to talk about this, so there's just different reasons that prompt our decision to speak on something. But, so, all right, so we get an episode plan and then we basically talk about it. Then right before, it's go time, we'll script it out. And
Lily, sit at this table.
Yeah. And we're scripting it and we're talking it through as we do it. And we go through that like 2-3 times, nothing major. Then we bullet it basically so that we can, again, reference it very quickly at a glance. And then there's like some emotional stuff that comes from that. Like depending on the topic that we're talking about, sometimes, it's a touchy subject and it brings up emotion before we film or during filming. And I know that happened for me 1 or 2 times where, it took over my emotions as we were preparing. And I know everyone's like, no, let it flow. Like, let your emotions come out. And I get that. That's very, I'm fine with being vulnerable authentic, and all that. Absolutely. It's not that I want to hide that. But the problem with me is once I get going and I start crying, I can't stop. So the rest of the episode would be ruined by me crying the whole way through. So anyways.
Yeah, but that was part. I mean, these were some deep topics. You talked about your story. I talked about mine. We talked about, having your children go through pain and so forth, and how that can help them over in the long run. So there were hardships around the holidays, right? So there were some topics that were definitely emotional, that we had to kind of work our way through before we could actually come on and present. And then of course there was working together next to your fiance, and it didn't always come across, like, this is great, let's go do it. There were some discussions and maybe some disagreements right before we got on camera that we had to
nitpicking.
We had to sort through. Like, she doesn't like how I script things or write things, but then she won't do them. So
Well, he actually has better handwriting than me. So when I say script and bulletizing things, we're kind of using things as a template. He's got way better handwriting, but then he'll write things that don't look like the letter. I'm like, what is that? So we're going through those things.
Makes perfect sense to me.
And then how about like the funny interruptions? So again, you have to prepare for these things, which we did not. But in my development, we have the lawn mowers or the ground keepers that happened to literally do the grass every like Wednesday when we were doing our podcast, filming. And in the one video, it was so loud and obnoxious. And I'm like, all right, what do? We just kept going because you can edit some of the noise out, which I think we did. Yeah. But again, we're like, here it is, real authentic life.
Yeah. So it was the lawnmowers, it was the leaf blowers, it was the door ringing, it was phones going off because we forgot to turn our phones off, right? So it was all kinds of stuff. And, we're in a studio that has a definitely, noise reduction, but it's not by any means like soundproof, right? So you have to deal with those things. But again, we didn't panic. We're like, okay, it's fine. And, nobody came back to us and said, geez, the lawnmower was really loud this time. But, we'll do our best. We don't film on Wednesdays anymore, right? For that reason. But, we're trying to acclimate to our surroundings. But again, you have to kind of go with the flow, right? You can't be so like, oh my God, it's got to be perfect, because it's not going to be, right? And you're going to
our podcast anyway. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that want it perfect, but from us, it's his and her life hacks. Yeah. And you're going to get the everyday, real, true self. So,
that's kind of what goes into producing a podcast and getting it out so where you can actually look at it. But then once you get to look at it and see it, then how do you react to it, right? How do you tell us how you feel? And that's where the feedback came in. And honestly, that was the most rewarding part about doing this whole thing. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
You guys were great. It was whether it was commenting on, YouTube, or whether it was commenting on the social media posts that Dawne would put out, or really getting deep on some of the DMs, some of the texts, some of the emails, or if we saw you in person, giving your candid feedback on it. It was awesome. And it kind of made us like, okay, like Dawne said in the very beginning, like, does it resonate? Are they interested? Clearly from that feedback, it did. And there was certain episodes, obviously, like when you told your story, you got a lot of like personalized feedback, which I thought was awesome. So
I absolutely. Again, if you've listened to the episodes, you've heard me say that I hate my story, but we're building a business on me sharing my story and Larry's story in the hopes of inspiring others and offering hope and just a means to help anybody in the middle of what we've experienced. But so, me hating my story and sharing it, and then you guys giving me the feedback and telling me how, maybe I touched you or you resonated, or, I got so many different emails and messages on that episode where so many people were actually sharing their personal stories. Thank you so much for opening up. It's very heartfelt. My heart breaks for you if you've gone through anything. Some of the stories were even worse than mine. So, it's just very touching, very, very touching.
Yeah. And I think, some of the other stories, the feedback I got on mine, people have heard mine before. I've done it on other podcasts. So it wasn't new to a lot of people, but, the feedback again was great and it resonated with certain people who may have not heard it. And then just some of the things like, again, the one we did around the holiday times about loss and, it's not always so, festive and fun as you go through the holidays. Sometimes people are dealing with real pain and real emotion as they go through things that happen to them in their life. And, some of the feedback we got there was very candid, very emotional. And again, so we know, while we're sorry you have to go through it, we hope that what we presented and some of the ideas and some of the things that helped us certainly resonated. And that's what you told us. So that was, again, that's
why we're doing this, honestly.
Exactly.
We're doing this for fun. We're doing it for what Larry just shared, the feedback, but we're also doing a podcast because ultimately we wanted to build our brand, and our brand consisted of our company. So podcasting is actually a component of our business. Our business is Grit to Grace, which you've heard us speak about. And, there's different segments of that business, and one of which is podcasting. The other one is coaching and consulting. And then public speaking. And through our exposure, or just us on the podcast, we have had some folks reach out to us for some of those opportunities. So again, if you're thinking about yourself and you're like, well, maybe I want this to be part of a business plan or something, absolutely do it. Go for it, because you're building that brand awareness. You're getting yourself out there. People are hearing you speak, and maybe they're being inspired by what you have to say. So therefore, that might lead to an opportunity.
You're also auditioning for people who may want to bring you in, A, as a guest on their podcast, right? Or B, for speaking, we talk about, some of the topics that we tackled during this first season are things that are part of our keynote speak or part of our individual, when we go out and talk about our individual, solutions and stories, right, to help others, right? And so those things come across in the podcast. So you're actually auditioning for potentially for people or for companies who may want to have you come in. So it's a great way to do that as well.
Yeah. And then our plan for this season
2.
we're going to have guests who specialize in certain topics that we think are going to be of interest to you guys.
Yeah, so we're going to try out the remote technology, which this platform
bear with
has. So I
us.
think it's actually going to work really well. But yeah, we're excited by this, right? Because we love to talk about the his and her life hacks and our experiences, the parental experiences, and things we've come through, right? But we also know that there's a lot of topics out there that we're clearly not experts on, but people need and want to hear about them. So we're lining up the schedule right now as we speak, and we're excited about the guests we already have lined up. And we're working on others. So I think you'll see a mix from us, right? Some will be, guests that we bring in. Some could even be family members with some pretty unique stuff to talk about.
I mean, we have 10 children.
Yeah, right. So
we may or may not have them as a guest.
And we may have to edit a lot of what they say out. But no, so that plus the speakers that, external who are experts in their field and will help motivate and educate and so forth. So we're super excited about season 2 and what we have to offer you.
Yeah. So stay tuned. And I guess just to wrap this up again, if you've ever thought about doing your own podcast, whether it's for personal reasons or business purposes, 100% my advice would be just dive in. Just do it. What do you have to lose?
Yeah, Dawne was definitely the advocate. I was definitely the skeptic. Like, I don't know about this podcast thing. But I'll tell you, it's been great. It's been awesome. It is some work, right? It does take planning. It does take time. To produce them and then to put them out into YouTube or the audio version, but it is well worth it, and it's been super rewarding. And again, based upon feedback, you've been getting a lot out of it, so we appreciate that.
Yeah. So keep listening.
All right,
and keep giving us your feedback.
Yeah, and then maybe next time will be another person, or maybe the time after that. All right, have a great day.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening in to this episode of the His and Her Life Hacks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to having you join us on future episodes. If there's a topic that you would like Dawne and I to discuss, please feel free to contact us at dawn.jacoby@grit2grace.com or larry.ambrose@grit2grace.com. See you on the next one.